In today's episode, we're going to talk about what I believe is the future of not only fitness, but wellness and just living well. And that is about mixed modality training. It's something we created here over a year ago, and there's the magic behind it. What does it do? What's the best way to explain it? When you can mix the modalities, the best elements, I guess, for lack of better words, from yoga, Pilates, sports conditioning, strength and conditioning, sculpt work, mobility, animal movement, meditation, breath. You bring all these together into a single practice. And as you would kind of expect, if you were participating in all these modalities individually, you would expect to have the results of an athlete. And what we've done is been able to compress these into a single hour practice and still get similar results to what if you were out there doing 5, 6, 7 hours a day training like an athlete, which was really the inspiration behind the concept. But let's go back a little bit. Let's look at mixed martial arts, probably the most well-known, or in the media, it's gaining a lot of traction. And we can kind of learn why it's so effective there for combat, because the same principles apply in your all-round fitness, wellness, life endeavors. So if you look at combat as a whole, mixed modalities is really the ultimate combat sport. Why? Because nothing's going to prepare you more for combat than being able to be good at all modalities. If you're great at jiu-jitsu, that's all well and good. If you're in, a brawl and someone's up close with you, you're probably going to be okay. But that's not going to be great when you've got someone that kickboxes and flings you to the head. And vice versa. Boxing is a great sport, but if you're in all-out combat, if someone grabs you into a grapple, you're in trouble. So that's similar. The power of mixed martial arts in the combat arena, and there's a reason I think it's gaining so much support and just eyes and views, interest, money, all the above, is because of this fact. And I believe this is going to be the same thing that unfolds within the fitness and wellness space over the next decade. And I actually think we'll look back in 10 years and go, can you believe we train just HIIT every single day? Can you believe we just lifted weights at the gym and destroyed our joints every single day? That's how I believe we will look back as the knowledge, science, the blending of science and spirituality and ancient practice, modern stuff all comes together. So to move on from that, let's look at each modality that we use. And each modality, I'm not one to, although it may appear that I'm talking down on each modality, it's quite the opposite. I love each modality. I love yoga. I think everyone should go on their own yoga journey and do some 2-hour yoga classes and practice and delve into that. There's so many great aspects and it's an amazing journey. However, would that be my long-term strategy for an all-round athletic body? Absolutely not. There's just far too many elements missing. For someone like myself that's going to be very active, surfing, running, jumping, climbing, doing so many things, if I'm just doing yoga, I find I'm very stuck on the planes of yoga, which is all straight lines. It's all very perfect. There's also not a lot of strength component through the legs. You can actually do a lot more strength in the upper body than people think in yoga. I've probably got in the best shape I've been in upper body wise, doing a lot of yoga, upper body stuff, funnily enough, back in the day. But yeah, yoga also misses that cardio element. Very hard to get that heart rate up to your 180s, 190s doing yoga. So there's just some missing elements of yoga. But it's not to talk poorly about yoga as such. It's just, I'm calling a spade a spade. And Pilates always, a lot of people already kind of mix Pilates yoga together, because Pilates really adds a lot of that core contraction and that time under tension in some different, sort of that mobility stretching moves, and you get that whole strengthen and lengthen component, and that's why they're a great hybrid together. But still, not enough. They've still got far too many weak points. I'm not going to be super mobile, agile. A better mix is to bring animal movement in there, which a lot of you guys probably never heard of animal movement, but I'm telling you now, this will make you the most agile, injury-proof athlete compared to both of those things. Not to say it's better, it's just got some differences. But it's also not going to give you the spiritual benefits, the energetic benefits, the meditative, mental benefits of yoga either. But animal movement, which I'll show, we'll do a whole video on, is really training the body to be able to twist and turn and get those tendons and the whole body moving, twisting and turning with a real functional, real life movement and load under these mobility stretches, kind of like you would do in yoga, Pilates, or mobility work. And that's why I really love animal movement as part of that integration. Mobility is super important because it's the only way to, you're not doing these internal, external rotations and different movements in yoga and Pilates practice. So we get to hit every single joint on all the required angles and get that joint moving as it should. But also there's a lot of stability required in mobility, because if you're too just loose and just stretchy, you actually need a certain level of muscle tension to injury proof it and keep it there and keep it strong. Because if I'm just too loose and you don't have enough strength, I'm at risk of something popping out. Okay, so we need that strength, and there's a big debate on how flexible you actually want to become. You can be, in theory, I'm not going to go into this today, too flexible can have problems, but for most of us that's not going to be an issue. And then we look at strength and conditioning. Okay, let's just look at, I wouldn't call weight strength and conditioning, but for this purposes we'll just categorize it all in one. A lot of people will overtrain these modalities, and if you're training strength and conditioning or weights or HIIT classes every single day, you're going to have a massive yang imbalance, and you're actually not going to get enough recovery. And what I always criticize the people in these spaces of, and not everyone but a big percentage, is most people get less functional every year. Like I had a group of guys in here in the studio last night, and I said, guys, when was all your max bench? 10 years ago. Why has it got so weak? Shoulder, back problems, left, right, and center. Okay, this is a bad strategy. So although if I just wanted to do weights every day, that intense hit, I'll probably get slightly more jacked, aesthetically than I am, just doing mixed modality. However, there's a trade-off. I'm not going to move very well at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and so on. I know with my mixed modality practice, I'm going to be surfing a shortboard at 90. That's just the way it's going to be. Unless I get hit by a bus or something of that nature, that's what I'm planning for. I'm planning for a 50, 60, 70 year adventure in this body. I do not want to be that, like a lot of guys that lift and hate to criticize, but I'm just calling a spade again, is a lot of guys that I was part of that lifter community. And a lot of them, they can't play with their kids. They just about pop an ACL or strain a back, and they become very stiff and rigid. So again, there's nothing wrong with strength and conditioning and weights. Actually, if you look at the data around anti-aging, people that have, as soon as you lose strength or your cardio ability, the speed of death goes up. Like, that's just super clear data on that. Obviously diet and other things, stress, affect that as well. But physically, strength is so important to stay strong, to stay powerful. Most people lift incorrectly, to put it lightly. And that's why things like variable resistance training, isometric training, eccentric focus, not going past 90 degrees in all movements, what that does is protects your joints. The reason most guys and girls injure themselves is they're overlifting past 90 degrees, the tendon loads, the muscle turns off. They're shoulder pressing, their back's all over the place, they're just doing a tendon bounce, pushing that weight, destroying the joints. So this is how 95% of people that lift, and this is why there is so many problems. Back pain is now costing Australians and Americans more money than cancer and disease. That's not to say it's worse, it's just what more money has been spent on. So it's a pandemic in itself, and I believe the biggest cause of it, other than the obvious of sitting, lack of deep core activation, is the way we lift. And so many people now are lifting and doing these hit workouts are kind of the craze. This is creating a massive yang, compression, impact, tension, resistance imbalance. You need to be doing a 50-50 balance, okay? Yin and yang, okay? This is, and if you don't believe in this strategy, look at guys like Tom Brady. They talk about it in their book. For every performance hour he does that yin, that recovery, decompression, release work, massage, breath, yoga. He's a big yogi. And there's a million examples of actual athletes training who are training for long term as they can. Much better strategy, in my opinion, than James the PT, who just got his PT certificate out of a cereal box and's copying his favorite bodybuilder, okay, or watching something online. So all these modalities are unbelievable, but they're all by themselves massively imbalanced and all have their own problems. When you bring them together, it's kind of like the Avengers, everyone's talents get brought together and they cover everyone's weaknesses. So mixed modality training is kind of like building a super team. If you're in NBA terms, you're building a super team within the body. We go one step further beyond the physical movement. We start to train the nervous system, the breath, the mind by starting a breath and finishing with a meditation. What's interesting about this is the same sequence of yoga. If traditional yoga is always start with the breath, bring the energy through the body, balance the nervous system, relax, get out of the mind, go through your asanas, your physical practice, and then you are primed and in a perfect state for deep meditation. So they understood this 3,500 years ago. We kind of use that same journey with, if you really watch how an elite athlete trains, and they've got 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, they'll go through a similar sequence. They'll prime the body, they'll stretch, they'll activate the joints, they'll warm them up, they'll go into some cardio, they'll start lifting, they'll hit their peak, and then they'll taper off, cool down, and a lot will meditate these days, the smart ones anyway. So we're kind of blending the modern science and common sense, in my opinion, science and common sense with ancient principles of yoga. You bring that all together in mixed modality training. So you can start playing with that yourself. You can start today. I like the sequence of yoga. I think yoga is the best warm-up. It's the most underrated warm-up by far, because if I'm doing a high lunge warrior or a lot of single leg stuff, watch your ankles, knees, hips. They're shaking. So what's happening when we're getting that shaking? We're turning all the stabilizers on, muscle-mind connection, and we're building, boom, rock-solid ankle, knee, hips, core, shoulders. Same thing when we do a lot of side work in yoga, side planking. Works really well. A lot of people that lift a lot have terrible stability in their shoulders. You know, side plank, they're all over the shop because they've only ever pressed. Okay, so this is going to protect the shoulder. Just one great example of yoga. But then we also want to mobilize the joints, make sure we've got nice range of movement, we're not seizing up, because excess yang and that lifting, compression, tension, running will start to tighten all those up. So we want to decompress the compression and open that up. Then we move into some animal movement and just get that flow, that body-mind connection, landing more softly with the way we move, body-mind control, landing more softly, and so on. Then we move into your conditioning round where we do a little bit of HIIT, but very low impact. A lot of people doing plyo to get fit. This is a terrible strategy because you need to be fit to do plyo, or all your joints, ankles and knees especially, will cause problems the whole way up. So you need to be doing some of the yoga, the mobility, the conditioning we do is getting you strong through all major joints, which most people miss. So you go through that, you get the heart rate up, and then you prime for some weights. And we do a lot of, everything's about perfect form, time under tension, tempo, and loading the muscle, not the joint. Thinking about our weights and a 10-year journey, or 50-year journey, should I say, rather than how good can I look next week? Because we can look maybe even better with no pain, all the gains without the pains, and have that longevity. Much better plan to lift, to drop the weight, to overload the muscle. You do not always want to overload the weight, because often we at the form goes, the joint's getting overloaded, the muscle is underloaded. There's a lot of studies now coming out that are showing, I read one, and I'll see if I can reference this. It was something ridiculous, like 70% of guys going to the gym weren't stimulating protein synthesis. Why? Because they're underloading. The muscle's not getting any stimulation for that. So that's a story for another day. But then we come into that, do a lot of functional full body moves, get the whole body working together, which is super important functionally. A lot of unilateral work on single leg is the fundamental of our training, because we're single-legged animals. If we're just squatting, deadlifting, that's all double leg. We don't move like that, and I can hide every imbalance in my body with those double lifts. So we train a lot smarter. We're training like athletes, so I recommend moving into that phase, and then you move into your meditation, which we'll talk about in a whole nother video. But we use probably 10 to 12 different meditation strategies to really calm the mind, to manifest, to retrain our thoughts, to change our perspective. And a lot of people really struggle with meditation because they don't really understand the framework of it, and they've never been taught it. So we're big on that. You can train on demand. Not everyone has access to our studios, but food for thought, train smarter. And what are the rewards? Longevity, pain-free, perfect form, all-round athleticism. You're going to move better than you've ever moved because you're mixing so many modalities, and you're going to be this kind of super athlete. And I kind of say, our members in here, they look like a blend of an athlete and a yogi, and not just the way they look, but in the way they move. So this is the future. It may challenge some of your beliefs, which I hope it does. I hope it does trigger a thought so we can evolve. Everything I say is based on, will it help people? Is it true? And will it just be part of evolution of the whole? And I 1,000,000% know it is the future. So this is mixed modality training, your introduction to it. Any questions? Fire below. So the funny thing is, the video I'm going to do over there